what it takes is just doing work on yourself. And I think Alan touched on it earlier, just beginning the process of peeling back an onion, which began for me in recovery when I started going to meetings and getting some time clean and going through 12 steps. You start working on yourself, peeling back, understanding I act this way because of this, and where does that lead me? And it's always leads you deeper and deeper until you really start making an effort into deconstructing, unlearning, as Alam said, what the lies you told yourself your whole life, why you tell yourself those lies.
You're listening to the Freio
Music Podcast.
To the Freio Music
Podcast.
Rocket, no combat, all love, radiant, raw rap, radiant, rainy, star slap, dirty low, underground, principle, let it flow, gotta learn, let it go, breath stroke, watch for the undertow, tie breaks, pull, don't panic, let the body roll, with the medicine, let the mind go, with the medicine, let the mind go, with the medicine, let the mind go, with the medicine.
My name is Eli Nakowitz. I'm based out of Los Angeles, been making independent underground hip hop and art since I was 17 in 96. Also, I'm a member of Grand Tapestry.
I also am a member of Grand Tapestry. My name is Alam Khan, and I'm based in the Bay, and I play sarod, which is kind of like this, but this is a small one. And I'm a classically trained musician and composer, and I do lots of other stuff too. And that's what Grand Tapestry sounds like.
Why is mental clarity important to you, and how do you cultivate it?
Mental clarity. Oh, that's a good question, bro. I already like where this interview is starting, man. It's not like, when did you first fall in love with hip hop and stuff? Oh my God. Mental clarity? That's everything, bro. Especially with all three of us here have children at different stages now. It is hard to maintain mental clarity when you're not getting enough sleep or you are spending a lot of your energy being a dad. But as of, at the stage that I'm in, 14 months or whatever, I'm starting to gain this like momentum now. Like this, I've adjusted sort of to the sleep. There's good nights, there's bad nights, but the creative energy is really smashing through right now for me. Mental clarity, to me, when I think of mental clarity, it just means no fog. I have a clear intent and I go after it with enthusiasm, right? Creativity brings those feelings all the time. Now, I always have creativity, it seems, which is great, but sometimes I just don't have the mental energy or clarity to execute. So when mental clarity is there, that's just like, let's go. I'm ready to go. I'm in the studio or I'm drawing or anything that is an outlet creatively, because I am fortunate enough to have different outlets. So it doesn't have to be just one thing, whatever I feel like doing. And being that I do not have a 9-to-5, when the clarity is there, I'm able to act on it. So it's everything to me.
Yeah, that's a big question. I'm not even sure. Eli answered that pretty well. For me, mental clarity is being able to slow down, slow down my brain. I go really fast, whether it's creating things or thinking about things or analyzing or self-critiquing and judging in every aspect of life, from mundane things to profound things. So for me, it's like slowing down and, being kind to myself and trying to especially when I see my, behavior towards other people or bringing up kids, like being a dad or my wife or my friends or whatever, which I barely see these days, but still, I'm first doing those kinds of things to myself, and that's secondly coming out to everybody else. So it's about slowing down, checking in with myself, and a lot of trying to unlearn a bunch of stuff that I've been doing for a long time. And habits, patterns, break them down, and step into a new age of being, And as far as music's concerned and how my mind's connected to that, I have my regular practice that I do for maintaining my chops on my instrument. I have my studies that I still do, even though I've been playing my whole life. I'm still learning from all of my lessons with my father, and I come from a very big lineage of classical musicians. So training is always going on, learning is always going on. And I'm a teacher, so I have to teach music. And so you got to, try to get enough sleep and relax. But there is an upkeep kind of thing, and then there's an inspiration thing. And they don't always sync up. So you go with each one when you can. Upkeep is as simple as going for a walk. Sometimes you just got to get your body moving. Inspiration's another thing. So when you find it, you run with it. And when you don't, you sit and wait for it to happen, or you read a book, watch a movie, listen to music, go out in nature, and that inspiration usually comes.
So how are you both able to tune, the upkeep, as you said? How are you able to do that? Do you both meditate? And if so, what does that practice look like for you?
I at one time had a really consistent meditation practice. It was always at least once a day. That was pre-child. Post-child, I haven't been able to form that, find the time to do it, or put aside the time to do it, because when I do have time, I'm working on something. So it's like, but working on self is the most important work we can do. So what time do I have? I have time when I'm walking with my daughter, take her for a walk in the morning, and we're listening to audio. I've been audio booking out lately, dude, just like and they are quote unquote self-help books, which sounds really corny to me, but really interesting, thought-provoking books that are pushing me into wanting to start new things for myself, including breath work and qigong, which I've been wanting to start and do for so long, but just haven't done it. And it's like, now these books are coming my way that are inspiring me to do so. So in the midst of it all, it's the books that you read or listen to, that is a part of the training into moving the energy, right? Even if you're not practicing and meditating and doing the actual exercises, my consciousness is there. My awareness is there. I know what I want to manifest as far as self-healing and where I want to go next as a human being. So as long as I got that going, I don't feel terrible that I haven't yet found the time, 20 minutes a day, to sit and meditate, or even start the breath work that I want to start. But I know it's right in front of me. It's just about stepping into it. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I don't sit and do meditation. I have a different periods of my life. I've actually tried to have a meditation practice, or nowadays, mindfulness, or whatever you want to call it. But for me, music is my meditation. It's my religion. It's my church. It's my spirituality. It's all that connects me. And when I do my practice and I get absorbed in doing that, then that really is a kind of catharsis and meditation for me. Other than that, taking deep breaths just to remind myself to do that, check in on my breathing, or it's like, oh, okay, I'm tense, I'm this, that. Slow down, take some deep breaths, maybe go for a walk, be in nature. Nature is a great form of meditation for me, because I'm a pretty heady dude. I think a lot. And, I know Eli will think a lot, but I have my own things. Everybody has their own things. And it's just kind of, again, slowing down, not necessarily sitting there with my eyes closed and doing all the meditation stuff, but finding other means that I can do that are practical for my life and that I feel I get the most benefit from, rather than thinking something I should be doing. I should be meditating in the traditional way. It's like, well, maybe that means walking meditation in the forest. Maybe that means taking in some deep breaths of nature and letting that reset you. There's lots of different ways. But I'd say that's probably the closest thing for me right now.
And I just want to jump onto what Alan just said about music being his meditation, because that's absolutely true for me as well. Creating, drawing for me too. I sit down to draw, and if I'm into what I'm drawing, I'll start at 1:00 in the afternoon. I'll look and it's 5:30. I'm like, what just happened? Because when you're in that place, meditative state, their time and space is irrelevant. It doesn't exist. Your brain is not there. When you're playing, when I'm making beats, when I'm writing, time doesn't exist. And that is to me, that's the optimum place to be. And if the more I could be there, and what I call it is just simply playing, the more we can play and be playful, then, all the harshness of life kind of disappears for that time. So more playing, man, playfulness.
You mentioned a term that I hadn't heard of, and it had to do with breath work. You said
Qigong.
Qigong. Thank you. Will you tell me what that is at like a rudimentary level? I'm not familiar with that.
Well, without speaking out of ignorance myself, I will say that it's an ancient Chinese practice of breathwork practice that is sort of in the Tai Chi kind of slow movement and breathing to bring up and vitalize your energy and heal the body too. Like Qigong is pretty powerful. Like this book that I was just listening to talking about monks who use these breath work and techniques. They could sit completely clothesless in the snow and create a huge melted circle around them and just heat up their body, at will, and do things that, most Western minds thought were impossible. And these are the types of things you can achieve, even though that's not what I'm aiming for, with breath work and stuff like Qigong. So it's just an ancient practice, breath work.
So I'll switch gears, and I definitely want to dive into both of your histories because it's so rich and fruitful of what you've created and the studies that you've done. But I think this might be relevant, and that is that I believe the first song that sparked your collaboration was Atma.
Come from the center of the chest to bless the world. Heartbeat battling and making a bed to curl up. Consequence to never dance is this. You gotta move the spirit to get the people to near it. I fear it not. Never been afraid, the personality is brave. You can never catch me or put me in a cave. I will never be the one to bury in the grave. Put me in a rocket ship and put me into space. Music is the way to God. I would like to think I'm odd. Heady like a nigga bod. I'm a thinker man, I think a lot. Many, many, many men pass away in innocence.
If you could speak to what is that word, what does it mean? I believe it's a Sanskrit word.
Yeah, Atma is like the self, so, there's probably more deeper meanings or connotations or whatever you could get into, but it means self basically. So your spirit, yourself, your soul, that kind of thing. So not really any, well, maybe on the lyric side for Eli, Atma would be more relevant, whereas for the music side, the music was not necessarily connected to that title. That was just there's a whole lot else that was thought behind the music, but the title was more fitting in with the lyrics and I guess just the vibe. One thing it does fit in, at least for me, is that Grand Tapestry, to me, has always been a way of expressing my unique identity freely. Whereas before I had to kind of separate things from classical and other forms like hip hop or rock or whatever I've worked in. Whereas for Eli, a continuation of his growth, I'm not speaking for him, but his growth as a MC and producer and all that stuff. But for me, it was more like bringing these two things I kept separate together consciously and allowing myself to not, to embrace and create from that unique space that is me. And that was one of the first times a project that I was behind and I wasn't just being a part of somebody else's music. It was the first time probably that on that scale and how much we put into it, that kind of project happened for me. So
I'm just curious, how did it start? What was like the initial layer? Were you both in the same room? Were you sending it back and forth? Walk me through it.
Alan, weren't we in the same room actually when you and Solar started figuring that one out? We were. I was sitting there while Alam and our buddy Solar, tabla player, were figuring out the basic parts of it. And I was just sitting on the couch just kind of watching because I had never seen classical music formed in front of me like that before. So I was just watching, maybe maybe I wrote a couple lines, but I don't think I did. I waited until they recorded the basic map, and then I started recording on my own over that.
The whole structure of Atma is based off of this thing called Sawal Jawab, which is like call and response in our classical form. It's usually done between the drummer and the instrumentalist towards the end of the performance or something like that, like one of the halves of the pieces you're playing. So in my head, I was like, well, it'd be really cool if we did that, but we combined the drum and the instrument together in another section called Satsangat, when you play together, and then have the Sawal Jawab call and response thing interact with Eli and have him do it. And I knew, because of Eli's music that I had listened to for many years, his chopping, fast rhythmical delivery in his lyricism and all that would go really well and complement and interact well. He would be able to do that and do it well, and he totally did. And as for the part where the verses are going, that's just taking a theme, a traditional theme, which we call a bundish or a gut, a GAT, and it's set to a rhythmic cycle, and we repeat that line, that theme, and Eli raps over it. And since I knew how to make beats, because I'd been making beats for many years and kept it separate, I knew there would be a way to do it without having all these, drum machines and whatnot going on. Later on in the album, we incorporated that too, because we love that. And Eli is a very prolific producer as well, more so than me. He's released countless albums, and I love his production. So it just all kind of came together well. But Atma was really an acoustic track. It was one of our most acoustic tracks, and it was really the one that was like, wow, this is different. And then everything else was just kind of extending that and trying all the things we could. But that was just like right out of the gate, people would go, whoa, underground hip hop and Indian classical music. I love both those. I never thought they'd be together, but it totally works. And I'm like, yeah, I knew it would. So when I talked to Eli, he's like, I'm down, let's do it. And so we met up and yeah, I think we just started doing stuff, and Eli was chilling, and then we refined the things and then gave him the music, and he wrote to it, recorded it.
Are those traditional riffs on that song? Are those particular things that were passed down? I don't maybe have the language for it, but you might.
Yeah, well, that's like it's kind of it's based in a raga. That's like in our Indian music, we have this whole concept of raga, which is kind of like a mode or a scale, if you will. But then there's just so much more that goes into it. It becomes like an entity, almost like a force that you're tapping into. And then it's like, take a famous piece from like Beethoven or Bach or Mozart for, to try to, for Western classical, European classical minded people, everybody knows Mozart and Beethoven. Maybe not the kids this age. I hope they do. But any case, imagine one of those pieces was going on that's famous and everybody knows, but it never ended. You're supposed to take the feel of it, the mood of it, the key of it, the sections of it, the movements of it, the instruments of it, all that stuff. And then you were to just continue that piece for another 20, 30 minutes with variation and not have it sound redundant and all that stuff. That would be kind of like a very childlike way of describing what a raga is and how one could just continue that framework and improvise and create. So what we did was kind of base it in a raga, but also just kind of base it in a scale and take the liberties to just play. And it's for Western trained musicians, it's a Dorian scale, and with an E flat and a B flat. And that was just like what I was playing is what I would play when I would be improvising. They're just the different patterns, different picking patterns, different lines, and that was all just kind of improvised. And then I think I fixed the lines that I liked and kept those ones, so it wasn't just completely improvised. But that's how I would play when I'm playing classical, but there would be more variation. You can see towards the end of the song, it starts to go into a bunch of stuff. That's kind of how I'd be playing the whole time. But during the verse, we just repeat that theme.
So Eli, in that song, you've got a lyric. It's like, music is the way to God. Alam, you said earlier that, music is your religion, and you both have kind of resonated with this theme. Were you actively talking about, what should you write? How does it come forth, your writing and your lyrics?
For me, it's never been a planned process to write. if I feel like writing, I feel like writing. If I don't, like Alam said earlier, I kind of just put the pen down and walk away if I'm not feeling it. It's always been the music dictates for where I'm going for me. What does the music make me feel like? What theme does the music make me feel like addressing? It's always been driven by the music. I've never really written before I heard the music. So I'm not the type of guy that sits in my room and writes a verse just like, oh, I need to write. Sometimes occasionally I have lyrics pop up and I just jot them. But most of the time the music dictates. So, and to me, when I say music is the way to God, I mean, to me, God is love, all pure love, right? And what drives Alam and I to be creatives and you know, it's love. It's just the most joyous kind of love, right? So, and that going back to that thing we said where when you're creating, when you're in the zone, it's a timeless, spaceless place, direct connection to me. Even back in the day when I was in my addiction and I was using drugs and other shit, it still didn't block my pathway. It's still, I was connected even through that. Just shows you how powerful it really is. And I just think to be creatives on earth is one of the most blessed, godlike things you can do. And not to say like, you know, well, I believe all of us have pieces of God in us. So, but to be as close to God as possible is to be in that timeless space, spaceless space. But that's where the lyrics come from. Sometimes it comes really easy, and that's when I know, oh, something just gave me that. That was like, here, take that. Sometimes I can't write fast enough. Sometimes I'm sitting there on the line forever, and I get there, but it's not, you know, and it's still good. But sometimes when you get stuck and I write some lines, I'm like, oh, I don't like that. Then I just stop. You know what I mean? So you always know when the chord is connected and the energy's going.
Sometimes you know that people also, there's just a kindred kind of spirit between people, you know, and in that way I feel like me and Eli have always it's just kind of been easy, you know, in that sense. We kind of get where each other are coming from, musically, message wise, spiritually, all that stuff. So when he said music is the way to God, my father used to say to me all the time and everyone that music is the fastest route to God. And he would say, and he would, yeah, and he'd say, it's, and you know, again, God meaning energy, cosmos, life, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't have to be a person sitting on a throne in the sky. And it was, he would say, it's the, you can do yoga, you can do meditation, you can do all those things, but this connects you. And I feel like, and he also said to me and other people that I've only played in tune a few times in my life. And this is like, for all the listeners that don't know, my father was a very, very, very famous musician. He is like a god to people in India. They're like, oh my God, he's a Bach or a Beethoven or a Mozart. And for someone like that to say, I've only played in tune a few times in your life is pretty ridiculous. You're like, come on, I mean, you know, but what I think he means, and this has come up a few times in different discussions recently, is that it's not just about being in tune on your instrument, it's being in tune with the cosmos. Meaning there's a deeper meaning behind just playing that note in tune. It's about connecting to that source. And then, you know, you ever played something, heard a piece of music, been in nature and seen a beautiful thing, and in that moment you go, man, if it all ended right now, that would be okay, because I feel like this is it. However I'm not trying to be, you know, morbid or anything, but like however you want to feel that, you just feel like this is it. It's that connection. So, you know, music is that, and I was always taught that that's the way we're trying to connect. And my grandfather used to say, when you're playing real music and you do this thing called sadhana is like a spiritual journey through music. It's your training nonstop. It's like being a martial artist and training, you know, forever, a Shaolin monk or a concert pianist or a classical Indian musician or an artist or whatever it is. But it becomes such a devotional practice that you do every day. That's called sadhana. And sadhana, he said, is the kind of thing where when you're playing, you forget who you are, where you are, what time of day it is, your surroundings and everything. You just become part of it. And that's what Eli was talking about earlier too. So it all connects, you know.
So I want to dive into your sadhana and how you were raised with music. And I read that you started out at a very young age. I think it was 7, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah, I started when I was 7 playing the sarod, yeah.
And how were you able to study as a 7-year-old? Like I could barely sit in one chair, you know. How did you take that on so deeply and embed it into your soul?
Well, I was born into it, so I was listening to music in the womb. The night before I was born, my father and a very famous, most people know Ravi Shankar because of the sitar and the Beatles and all that. Ravi Shankar learned from my grandfather. So my grandfather is pretty much the godfather of Indian music, spreading to the whole rest of the world in the probably most popularized, well-known form of it. So I was kicking away at my mom's stomach, and she's like, oh my God, this baby's trying to come out. Like even in the womb, like I did singing. At first I did singing. I would go to my father's music school, the Ali Akbar College of Music that's still here in Marin. And I would go when I was a kid and I would sing. And then they got me a little sarod and they put little stickers on it because you can see it's fretless. This is a mini one. It's not the real size, but it's fretless. So little office stickers so you know where the notes are placed, like training wheels. And I picked it up and I put it down. I picked it up and I put it down. I wanted an electric guitar. My mom and dad got me an electric guitar. I wanted to play Nirvana. I wanted to play Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam and all the stuff. And that's really, I love that music so much. It's like, I mean, I love Indian classical music, but man, yeah, I love that music so much. So kind of played that for a while. My father encouraged it. He didn't force me. And then eventually one day when I was in my teens, I was listening to my father's recording and I found that the sounds that I got, the feeling that music took me to, like the grunge music or hip hop music or whatever it was, I felt like that feeling I got to through my father's playing, but it held me there longer and took me to an even deeper place, a different place. And so one day I finally heard it and recognized it, and it sounded like home to me. It sounded like an old friend. I recognized it and it haunted me beautifully, in a beautiful way. And I still play to this day. Before I just kind of heard it. What's that thing in White Men Can't Jump? You hear Jimmy, but you can't listen to Jimmy, but you can't hear Jimmy.
Yeah.
So
I'm listening to Jimmy, but you don't hear Jimmy.
So it's that kind of thing. I was listening but not hearing. I was hearing but not listening. And I didn't, so eventually when I finally heard it and I heard the calling, I started playing a lot more, and my father got more strict. I started going on tour with him, and I devoted my life to being a sarod player of this, to continue my family's lineage. But it happened in phases. So I've always been listening to different forms of music and playing it too. So,
well, that's wonderful that your family embraced the different kinds of music that you were curious about. That was clearly a total left-hand turn from Indian classical music.
My mom is Caucasian, so she was a hippie, and my father had been married before in India. He was a much older man, and I have a very unique upbringing in that sense between my hippie mom and my old school Indian dad. But they really, that to him was when he finally felt at home as well, that was the right kind of person for him, because he could be himself and be honest and be at peace and not have to worry about all the dramas of being a very famous musician in India and all the politics and dramas. And so they complemented each other well. My mom played me Jimi Hendrix and Crosby, Stills and Nash and Janis Joplin and all those things. And my dad was the OG Indian classical musician. So this is, and then I came out of it.
So Eli, I want to go back through your early days real briefly. I read that you started out in Grouch's basement making beats. Is that right?
Sort of. Not. I think when I ended up in Grouch's basement, that's when I made my first solo album, tape, whatever you want to call it, from top to bottom, producing the whole thing and learned how to record. I learned how to make beats on an ASR-10 sampler in Grouch's basement. I learned how to use a 4-track and record myself. And so that was the beginning of my solo career. But before that, when I was even younger, 15, 16, I was in LA with a group called Log Cabin, just a big group of guys making crazy music, crazy wild music that became kind of like folklore to underground heads. But yeah, Grouch's Basement is kind of where I began my musical journey as a solo artist and as a part of the soon-to-be formed Living Legends. It was a magical time, man. I mean, there will never be another time for me that will feel like that. Hopefully, I'll have things come into my life that will give me a whole new version of that. But I'll never be able to feel those feelings again. Where food didn't matter, nothing mattered except making music in that basement. While Grouch went to go deliver pizzas, I was on his equipment making shit. I'm sure he was not. I'm sure he did not like that all the way. Although he let me stay in his house like a stray dog, stray cat, and eat his leftovers and smoke his beaties and make music on his equipment. But that's where it started for sure, bro.
You really took advantage of the equipment that was there, even though it wasn't yours. You didn't necessarily have full access. But when he's out of the house, who else is using it? So, and
when he was there, he was gracious enough to show me how to use it. I mean, he wanted to use it just as much. Of course, he wanted to use his stuff. And when he's off work, he wants to, I had to get out of the way when he was home. Like, he wanted to work on stuff. But I remember, I have vague flashbacks of like being in the room, even though he's working, and and him inviting me to, either jump on the song with him or what should I add to this beat? Or so I was always like behind him trying to learn how he's doing stuff on that keyboard. And learning that I didn't have to wait for anybody to make something and put it out in the world. I did not, being signed to a label like that was like, or, with the new group of people that I had surrounded myself with, they were all like, fuck that. You don't need a label. You don't need any of that. You do it yourself. You go to Kinko's, you draw your cover at home. You go to Kinko's, you make copies, you cut them out, you dub the tapes yourself, you write on the tape stickers, you put them together, you go on the street and you sell them. And I was good at all of that except the selling part. I would get on the corner with all these dudes that were loud and like, tapes, I got tapes, hey, you need to check this out. Da-da-da. I was just in a hood, just like, hi, I have something too, you want to see it? Like, I was not good at that part. I was too shy, but I learned everything in those days, especially the independent spirit, that you didn't need anybody to do your art.
Talk to me about that shyness and how you were able to overcome that. Obviously, you get up on stage in front of hundreds, thousands of people, and you control it. So how?
It's an interesting one. That's a good question, man. Because back then, I didn't control it. I was very introverted. I was so introverted. I had dreads that were over my eyes. I had a hood over my dreads, so I was like this. I didn't want you looking at me, or I was just so self-conscious, and at the same time doing these things that forced me into the light, right? And I was so shy. I used to pull my jacket over my hand, like you never saw my hands. I was completely covered up, just always. And I remember the first show we had as a group, Living Legends, before it was really a group, was not too long after I made that first project. And these guys were drinking before the show. And I'm like, let me get a drink because I'm so anxious and nervous. And I realized right then, oh, alcohol makes me feel less nervous. And so that was simultaneously my way of dealing with the shyness, which is the wrong way for me, because I would learn soon that I was an addict and it would take me way deep down the rabbit hole in the wrong direction. Eventually, I would get clean in 2005 and do my first show clean without any substance. And I'll never forget how nervous and butterflies were swarming. And as soon as I got on that stage and we started going, then it was gone. It was transformed into this energy where instead of hiding on stage, I was completely open and I could see everybody's faces and I wasn't afraid of that. And that became a spiritual kind of high on its own. And to this day, 7 years in, since I did my first show, I still get butterflies. Like, I just did a show with Grouch a month ago. It was a big festival in LA. There was 8,000 people at our stage. And right before I go on, I'm just like, okay, here we go. But I know that once the song starts and I start going, it's going to go away. You know, shyness extends past just being on the stage. There's been so many levels of me breaking through over the years. What it takes is just doing work on yourself. And I think Alan touched on it earlier, just beginning the process of peeling back an onion, which began for me in recovery when I started going to meetings and getting some time clean and going through 12 steps. You start working on yourself, peeling back, understanding I act this way because of this, and where does that lead me? And it's always leads you deeper and deeper until you really start making an effort into deconstructing, unlearning, as Alam said, what the lies you told yourself your whole life, why you tell yourself those lies. And it's a never-ending, lifelong process that it sounds like if you say that to somebody who hasn't even started doing that kind of work, it sounds like, oh my God, this sounds, what do you mean lifelong? I don't want to do this for life. But it becomes joyous and freeing, and it becomes something that you look forward to making those breakthroughs. So, throughout the process of my career, it's been just breaking down door after door, peeling back onion layer after onion layer. And it continues, as we say.
Alam, I wanted to ask you, having your dad be such like a rock star, that's got to be pretty daunting for you to get up on stage and, people might know your dad and judge you as a result of it. How did you overcome, that self-doubt or any lingering fears that were internal?
Well, I haven't. I'm still working on it.
Well, that's honesty.
It's a when you walk in shoes like that, you just can't. You have to walk in your own, and you have to not really care what everybody else thinks about it. So when you have someone that's so revered, then in that sense, you'll let me put it this way. The only thing you're responsible for is when you fall short. Because if you're good, then someone says, of course you're good. You're the son of such and such. It's in your blood. You didn't do anything to get that. You didn't spend your whole life battling with, should I do this or not? But if you don't do good, oh yeah, that's him. That's all him. He's not his dad. So no matter, and that it hurts. It's painful, and it's giving me a lot of stuff in my brain to think about. But I know what my father thought me and my playing, and I know the reason why I want to play the music, and that's what I try to connect to. I try to connect to that spirit, that love, and that kind of power that's in the music. And so for me, that's kind of what I do. I'm still nervous when I play, and it's classical music. It's you're looked at so intensely on your technical playing, and then your other playing, and everything. So in that way, I have to accept there's always going to be people that are going to judge and not like and compare me to, and I'll never get away from the comparisons. When I do something good, I do something great. Oh, just like your dad. Oh, it's just like his father. Oh, when I close my eyes, it reminds me of your father. It's rarely that it's anything that I do, unless I don't play good. So, it's weird. It's weird. And it's an ongoing thing. And like I'll be the first person to say, I am learning and unlearning how to learn, however you want to say it, for the rest of my life, because I think you're here on this planet to grow. And once you stop growing, either it's just the end of the line for you, and maybe it'll connect in another life or what. But anyone that says, I know what's up, and this is that, and this is this, it just ends it all. And it's not me. So I'm always trying to learn and improve and be kind to myself, and, light a fire under my butt when I'm being lazy about certain things, and see my problems and try to work with them as best I can, whether they're in life or in music. But also with compassion, and that's the mission. That's the mission for me.
I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper into something that you said now at least twice, and that is unlearning. And I find it kind of an interesting topic. Like, do you think in order to learn something new, you've got to unlearn something old? How do you see unlearning? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, for me, I just feel like when you're born, you have to get all of these things. As a parent, I'm thinking about what am I saying to my kid? I'm sure I already messed up my kid in many ways, but but in other ways, I think I've given him so far some really sweet, beautiful qualities that matter to me and that I think life's all about. So I think it's both. I can't be perfect. I'm not going to be perfect. So right off the bat, I have to throw that out the window because I'll constantly be beating myself for not being perfect. I can be aware and I can try harder. That's one thing. So for me, when you're born, I think your parents and society give you all these things and you got to get them so you can interact with the world. And then you realize, even if you tell your kid, oh, I'm going to teach him how to do this so he doesn't have to do all those things. Sure, but still, your child's going to have their own identity and do their own things and learn all of those things from everybody else. Then when you get older, I feel like now it's time to like strip away half of that stuff that doesn't matter at all, and it feeds into neurosis and complexes and patterns of this and that. And in that sense, it's kind of like simplifying things, getting to the root of it and what matters. To me, that's kind of what unlearning means, breaking these patterns that you're just habitually in or not just being aware and breaking it down, being mindful of that, to me.
When you guys are both on stage and you are in the flow, like you're just feeling it, the timelessness, the spacelessness, what is going through your mind, if anything, and what are your eyes closed? Do you visualize things, when you're in the middle of an improvisation or, a flow, how do you perceive life?
When I'm in the flow with us, Grand Tapestry is such a whole different thing for me than performing my other stuff. Just like with the DJ and, whatever, my Grouch is with me, whoever, that's just a whole different vibe than Alam and I together, because Alam does such a different thing than I do. I cannot sit still like him. If I had to sit, I would freaking go nuts. I would probably be a mess. I have to move around. I have to jump. I have to run across the stage. I have to get close to people and get them to react to what we're doing. I want to get the energy moving in the room. Otherwise, I couldn't do what Alam does. Just put it that way. So to see us on stage and you see Alam here in seated with his instrument playing, getting in the zone, and me just back and forth and running around. It's a trippy thing. I bet it's an interesting thing to look at, because it's just a combination of two worlds that's just don't seem to go together, right? But for me, I want my mind empty. I don't want to be thinking about the lyrics, because I've gotten into zones in my life where I was forgetting lyrics to songs I've known for years and like psyching myself out, blanking myself, because I'm in my head too much. I'm thinking about what's the next lyric, what's the next song, and all it does is destroy the ability to be present on stage. And if presence is everything, being in that's where I really have been learning. First off, how do you be present? How to be in the moment? How to not let your mind wander? Is completely being in the music, listening to what Alam's playing, connecting with the crowd, staying out of my head. And when I feel like I'm getting in my head, I will close my eyes for a second and I will picture coming straight down, and I'll do a small prayer. Please get these lyrics to me straight so I don't have to think about them. Boom, it works every single time. So the goal for me is to be massively present with those who are watching and with Alam on stage with me. Absolutely.
I am pretty introverted when I play. I always have, whether it was guitar or sarod or whatever. So for me, I like to just be behind my instrument. And my father, probably some of it has to do with my father too. He was not a showy guy. He really just had the music. I mean, you can't be, first off, when you're playing this kind of instrument, you can't be moving around and stuff like that so much. So some people have like a strap and they play, but it's not for me. So my father would always sit down and close his eyes and play. And the music commanded everything. And see, this is where it's very different. Something between hip hop and Indian classical music. It's like hip hop, words, communication, expressing, engaging, interacting. That's part of it. Hype, being that's part of the form, beats, all of it. So when you have something like Indian classical music, it was the kind of thing where you put your head down and you play. And some people show off with like their eyes and they like make faces and they wear certain kinds of clothes. Even in classical music, it'll be like, doing all this stuff, but it was just not my dad's style at all. So I definitely took a page out of his book, consciously, subconsciously. And so for me, if I'm behind my instrument and I can play, that's my means of expressing, and that's what I'm doing. And I don't really need to do all the moving. I did some of that with Grand Tapestry. I had to strap on this road, and it just felt weird. So, I'm back there with Ableton and running all these things, and a lot of the songs are fixed. The songs are fixed, but one of the cool things about Grand Tapestry live show, which is different, is that we have sessions where we make all new music. And I guess the closest thing you can compare that to is like a beat maker, a DJ with a pad, and they're like punching out beats, which we do on our thing too. But most people don't really do a whole lot of that. It's kind of like, this is the show, and we've rehearsed this thing too, and we know what we're doing with this even. But with us, it's like there's sections where we'll just play Indian classical and introduce the audience to what that sounds like, the ones that are not familiar with it. Then we'll have like beat making sessions where Eli will be on the drum pads or whatever it is, and I will be on Sarod, and we'll have another percussionist maybe, and we just start making these, whatever that sound is. It's not even like a genre for it. People say world music or global or whatever, but for me it's like traditional instruments with beats, with all these things, and it's just making music, just being in the spirit of it and being in the moment. And that's something that's really cool about whenever we perform, is that aspect, I think. So for me, again, being in the moment. I may not be moving around, but definitely you're being in the moment, and trying to let go, because when you let go, like Eli was talking about, it is the best part of your music when you can do that. For me, when I'm thinking, like, I may be improvising, but I'll be so heady about doing this or that. It's almost like when I mess up a bunch and I'm like, ooh, that was bad, I've already kind of failed. So it's like, now play whatever. my playing's usually the best because I'm loose and free and I don't really care. It's perfection. Perfection is the problem for me. So it's trying to create as if I was pre-composing it, but improvise in that way with that quality of thought, like envision it beforehand, but also to accept imperfection and let it go.
That resonated with me. I appreciate you.
Good. Just fall on your face right in the beginning. Every show. What's up, guys?
Get it out of the way. Blow. Okay, now we can play. Let's go.
So there's another track that I'd really love to dive into. I'm not 100% if it was the first song that I found of yours, but regardless, it's the first one I shared. And I was like, yo, you guys got to hear this. This is so cool. And I showed my wife, and it's Youth. And it has such a light, gentle, warm, friendly feeling.
We had a good day today. We took the kids out and we hit the swings. We took the dogs out to the park and things. We've been together for a minute, but I still sing songs all about us and the life we've made. The picture that I painted since the 7th grade. I love it when you put your brown hair in braids. I love to watch you be a mother, that's my lady. Over there with that crown of gold. I've seen it on your head since I first laid eyes on the woman I would marry, no compromise. I saw that face and I knew you were mine. One night, little man walked in tears, said a nightmare scared him. His biggest fear came to life. A big wave took him away. I said, son, don't worry, cause we're here to stay. Don't be scared of the wave when it comes.
It is absolutely unique, as is all of your tracks. But in this one in particular, I'm just curious, was this a true story, Eli, that your son came in with that dream?
First of all, Mike, I love that you love that song, because Alam and I loved it since we made it. And I just thought it was so unique that I didn't know who would hear it how I heard it, so to speak. And it sounds like you did, which makes me happy. And the fact that you wanted to share it with your wife is great. That is, it's sort of a head trip, because I'm talking about me as a little boy being traumatized by being taken under by a wave and thought I was going to die, and my dad pulled me out. And that memory is just implanted in me. Talk about, dealing with traumas and understanding where these things come from in our lives. And so I mentioned that in terms of being a dad and having my kid come to me and me kind of explaining or telling him that it's going to be okay. But the whole story, of me with my wife and kids and dogs going to the park, having a beautiful day, that was before I had a daughter. And my wife and I were married, but this was all a projection in my head. Like I just saw it in my head, and the music, the guitar playing that Alam sent me brought all of that out. As I always, as I told you before, like the music drives me. So it felt like a beautiful day. And it felt like a sweet moment where you would have with your child, explaining to them that they're going to be okay and it was just a dream or a nightmare. And but also that tidal wave kind of metaphor has been, it makes sense that that's been a fear of mine my whole life, is that the big tidal wave is going to come and wash us all away. More than an earthquake or a hurricane or any of that, it's been tidal wave. Well, it's like, duh, I was 4 or 5 when this wave took me under. Of course, that's my biggest fear. So anyway, it was sort of a mixing of projection ahead of a family, of my family, mixed with me talking to the younger me, which is what it was.
So just to be clear, it was a physical wave that took you under. It wasn't a nightmare for you.
Yeah, it was. But I continued to have nightmares all the way up to adulthood now, where tidal waves are coming,
Wow.
And I see it coming. Yeah.
In that song, how did it, you said it started out with a guitar, and then I feel like, if I'm not mistaken, this road comes in. Did you create that entire track at first?
Can I say something first about this album? This part of when we were making these particular songs, we were sending stuff back and forth. Alam's in the Bay, I'm in LA. We couldn't be together, so we're just working. And Alam will text me a guitar that he's playing in his living room. You can hear his son, he was smaller, obviously, a little guy. You could hear him playing. You hear Alam playing this guitar loop, and I'm like, dude, I'm instantly inspired, right? I couldn't even wait for him to send me a better played, in-tune played version. I took what he would send me, and I would loop it and record to it and send him some shit back. And he'd be like, dude, this is not in key. You can't do it yet. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care if it's in key. This shit has inspired me. But that is like, how awesome is that, man? He texts me playing a guitar loop in the living room, and I'm like, have to write to it right then. It was a bunch of those moments that happened. But yeah, go ahead, Alan.
No, I mean, there's a lot. And there's a bunch of songs that we haven't put out yet. We broke that album into 2. We actually had 2 parts, but we decided to make EPs instead. But that whole time period, I would be with my kid, and he was like 2 years old, and he was like, da-da, in the background and like banging things and, whatever. And I'm playing it on a voice memo on my iPhone. And Eli would just straight up, like, there's one version of the song where you can straight up hear my kid do something and it like chops in a way, and then it loops, and it actually sounds pretty good. Especially me to like not care as much as at having the most high fidelity sounding thing, and just like go with what the original version. And it's about the substance, it's about the feel of it, and those songs are really cool in that way. So yeah, this song started like that. And Eli actually wrote the whole song to just the guitar loop. And he thought that's all it was. I'm like, no, I added Sarod to it. He's like, what, you did? And he's like, well, I'm just used to the guitar thing now. And so, I was like, no, you'll like the Sarod, trust me, but it'll get, we call it mixitis a bit. When we listen to something, we get used to it. We're just like, that's what I want to like that. And then someone changes something and you're like, I don't know about this anymore. So in that sense, the Sarod wasn't even on the version that Eli was doing. And then, but I think that's happened before too. I add stuff later on. And yeah, but I love that song. It's a special song. I think it's a unique one too, as far as like songwriting goes for our Grand Tapestry kind of song, songs in general.
Something that Alam just said that he kind of got cut off, but it's important what he's saying. Alam deals with perfectionism, and I think people celebrate perfectionists a bit. I don't know if they do, but it's, in my mind, they do. Like, perfect, nail it every time, boom, gotta be perfect. It's like the most poisonous thing for me personally. Perfectionism is what has caused me so much pain in my life. And Alam is the same way. And part of our process with when we were specifically working on the Tides EP, the songs on that EP, Alam and I were going back and forth about some spiritual shit. We were getting into like to the nitty gritty because it's hard for him to let go of imperfect notes and, you know, squeaks and squawks that shouldn't be there, but realizing like, if I let this go, this is beautiful the way it is. And just stripping away some of that perfectionism has been a lot of what I've been going through in the last year of peeling back the onion. Realizing that I over rehearsed for shows for so many years, and it really was killing me, killing my throat, and making me so in my head about getting things correctly and controlling the outcome of shows. It's like like we said earlier, letting go is the only way to be, and it's very hard for both of us. But it's getting better for me, especially since for the last few shows I've done. I'm going on a tangent, sorry, but I rehearse maybe 5 times for an hour rather than for 3 weeks straight every day. It's like, dude, I was overdoing it so much. And then finally, like, dude, I have to stop this. This is a pattern of trying to be perfect and control things, when being on stage, Alam and I could be on stage, messing up lines, playing the wrong note, and the people don't care, dude. They're like, this is amazing, this energy, that it's all about the energy exchange. I've said that a million times, but letting go of perfectionism, that's been a big part of both of our recent creating together, for sure.
Just popped into my mind another tangent, but I'll go there. There's a Sublime track, and I remember I always have listened to music really closely, and Bradley had the hiccups while he was singing it. And it's like, man, really? Like they kept that one? It's like, oop, you know, it's just mid line. It's like, okay, you know, but I really appreciated it. I don't think most people hear it. But regardless, it's just that human nature. And if you both were just pursuing perfection, you'd be still working on that first track. Exactly. And now you're prolific and you're putting stuff out there and people are resonating with it. And, you know, nobody wants a robot. So I appreciate that.
I think people also get, like, when you hear something that you think is not perfect, it also depends on the form of music you're making and the context. But if you're making something that to you is like, oh man, this is so not right and not perfect, like to other people, like Eli will say, oh, I messed this up, or this and that song, this song or that song, but to me it sounds great. So it's really just about our own fear and insecurities at the end of the day, and trying to let go of that a bit. So
tell me a little bit about the Sarod. I find it very unique instrument. Below, I call it the bridge, I think this was called on the guitar, the strings actually cross those sympathetic strings. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, all these guys up in there, they run straight, but the bridging pattern is not straight. It's all goes to different kinds of holes, and that's the way it maintains its position on the skin. It gets the centeredness. That's why it's all mapped out.
So if you could briefly walk us through, you know, like what are the sympathetic strings, like what is played, what is not played, and some of the nuances that the Western ear might not know.
There's 25 strings. There's 4 main playing strings. And then there's resonating strings here called Jawari strings. And then there's all these resonating strings as well. So you play on these 4 here. And when you hit a note on this fingerboard that corresponds to one of these resonating strings, it gives it that resonance. And it gives it that kind of, it picks it up and gives it that kind of echoey, resonant quality, which is the beauty behind it. It's fretless, and it's got goat skin here, and not amplified, obviously acoustic. This is a bell just for some sonic sculpting and like kind of weight. And this is my pick. It's made out of a coconut shell. It's called a Jabba, like Jabba the Hutt. And
Jabba the coconut.
So basically, that's what it is. And you slide by using your fingernail. And if I just use the pad of my finger, it would sound like this. So I have to have some nail on my first 3 fingers.
Totally different.
Right? I can't. And then the picking. kinds of things you can do, and it takes a lifetime to learn this kind of instrument. But you know, this is the instrument that runs in my family, and so I'm learning every day. I'm still trying to figure out how to even play this thing.
Obviously, there's tons more to learn for anybody who's interested. You are a teacher. Where do you teach?
My family's music school. It's called the Ali Akbar College of Music. We're in the Bay. It's our 52nd year. We established in '67, and so we're still teaching that and the tabla as well, and singing. And we teach Indian music on all instruments, all types. You know, the main thing is the person needs to be proficient enough on that instrument to incorporate the music. So it's like if a cellist came, I wouldn't be able to teach them cello technique. But if they can play a little bit, then I can teach them how to, you know, bring the music to their instrument. And of course, you know, there's a lot of instruments out there, but that's the way we've always done it.
There's one last track that just hits me in the gut and energizes me, gets me on my feet. Radiant. It is a really, I would say, just a fly track and energizing beat.
All love, hit like gold glove, out the mud, but my load is shoot up, fly straight over Hill Valley, vibrate, reconnect in Cali, Mo dubs, big bass, rattle trunk, elevate, skyscrape, rally up, toe touch, stretch like yogi, every day when I wake, yeah, you know me, can't wait, now what's the time takes, gratitude, attitude, meditate, eat right, stay cool, better mood, E and me, bringing you the soul food, collard green, peas with the black eyes, what I mean, want to see a soul rise, self-esteem.
Eli, are you making the beats?
I make the beats on a majority of them, but not Radiant. That was an Alam beat. Alam makes beats as well, and that he sent me that beat. That one has an interesting story because he sent me that beat maybe a year before, and for a Grouch and Eli song that he thought it would work for us, and I, for whatever reason, it didn't hit me in that time until a year or whatever later when I either pulled that up or Alam sent it to me again and said, I sent this for G&E a while back, check this out. And I was like, dude, this beat is fire right here. And so, you know, it's just Alam sent me that and wrote to it and had our boy Zumbi jump on, God bless him, who passed away last year. So that song is extra special. I love that song. I wish, you know, when I think about these songs, sometimes if I let it get to me, I'll get sad because I want more people to hear it. You know what I mean? Like, that's always what Alam and I want. It's like, do we want big money and perform in coliseums? I guess that would be cool. But what we really want is just everybody to hear the shit. And it's really hard when you don't get to experience that on a massive level, but it's going to keep, like I said, it's going to keep resonating and reaching people forever because that's music's just, it's going to be here long past us. So I love that song. I love the flute. I love Alam's loops that he made on there. It's just a cool freaking beat, man.
Alam, did you want to speak to that beat or to that song in particular and what inspired you?
Like you said, I made it for the G&E in mind and Zumbi as well, actually. I kind of thought that would work. And then Eli just immediately said, I said, let's get somebody on this. And he's like, Zumbi. I was like, it's funny you say that because I was kind of thinking it. And that's, you know, that's it. It was just a simple beat. Sometimes the most simple things work nicely, you know, and you don't have to complicate things. Me and Eli both like that, kind of just like simple and space, and just everything has its own. It's good like that. And I have my friend Jay Gandhi play classical bansuri, which is like the Indian flute on that. And again, Dorian mode scale, but a different raga. It vibes more. It follows more of a different raga's ascending pattern. And it's a feel good beat that's just positive energy. And Zumbi's great. I really wish we could have played it with him someday, you know, performed it with him. But it's not in the cards, but I'm glad we got to make it. And that was actually the last time I saw him was in the studio when he came and did his vocals in Berkeley or Richmond or whatever. So yeah, I love all those songs on that album. And we have a whole another album, another half of it, which we'll eventually release. But, you know, me and Eli have our own individual musical careers, and our dads and all that stuff. So it's like Grand Tapestry's kind of always been a passion project for us. And sure, we want people to hear it, but we make the music regardless, because I think we're making something that's definitely ahead of its time. As far as hip hop's concerned, it's still a young art form, and you know, reaching what the stuff we're doing right now, and nobody's even doing that at all. And not just us being honest. We don't think that we got to do this to be ahead of the. It's like, no, this is just us being ourselves. And hopefully people will hear about it more down the road too. But in the meantime, it's just us doing our thing. And when we have time, we put out Grand Tapestry music, and, you know, I love it. It means a lot. And the people that get it and hear it and really like it, like they really resonate with it. You know, they're like, wow, what is this? You know, so those people that get it, it's like, we're making it for them. So
If a young musician came up to you today and was looking for advice, what advice would you give?
This question comes up a lot, and I have the same answer because it's really simple to me. I tell people, especially now, be you completely. Like if you think your stuff is weird and doesn't fit in with other people's shit, and you think, oh, I should mold myself to be more appealing to a wider audience, or a group of sound that sounds like this sound or this sound, I tell them, do not do that. Do you all the way. Be the most weird as you are. I mean, that's the weirdness is the good stuff, man. That's the good stuff. Don't get rid of that. Focus on that. And if you have multiple skills in your life that you think don't necessarily correspond with each other, use all your skills, because anything that makes you stick out in this ocean of creatives that all have iPhones and all can put their shit out in one day after they make it, you got to do something that makes you unique. You don't want to fit in with everybody else. That's a way to drown in that ocean. So I would say, be as unique as you are. Speak, you know, what speaks to you. Speak that. Don't, you know, and use all your skills. Be unique. Use your own voice. Don't use a voice that you think people want to hear.
yeah, I would second what Eli said, being unique. And I'd say be authentic. And whether
Authentic
that means
is the word. Yep.
I think both. I think authentic to yourself, authentic to a tradition, to an instrument, to whatever it is. Be 100% real, and don't make music because one person's making it, so I should make it like that. If we all didn't do that, then there'd be a lot of different kind of music out there, and people really wouldn't be. It wouldn't be about the money, because people ultimately don't make music for money. Make it for yourself, and make it for other people too, but make it the music you want to hear. And you know, that if more people did that, I think it would be a better musical listening world.
I just posted a quote. Somebody posted it. Quincy Jones said at some point, once you start making music for money, that's when God walks out the room. I was like, yep, that is a fire quote right there.
Outside of music, what are you guys into? Obviously, Eli, I've seen some of your paintings, and in fact,
Oh, shit. Did you buy one, dude?
Yep, you know it.
Yeah.
You gotta respect art where it comes.
Man, I mean, that's become a huge part of my career is art. It's not just a side hustle anymore. So I focus in on art whenever I'm feeling it. Like I'm drawing something right now. I've started doing a lot of digital art. And
unlucky.
So anyway, art is a big, huge part of my life. Producing, Alam and I both are trying to get into scoring. I want to score film. I'm manifesting the crap out of that right now. I'm just envisioning stepping up on that podium and thanking all my underground rapper friends when I win for Best Original Score at the Academy Awards. I can't wait. So anyway, those are the things I'm into. And being a dad, number one, man.
Yeah, being a dad, being a good dad, being a good son too, because I was a son first. So I'm still a kid inside and trying to connect to that kid that I'm seeing in my son and how I wanted to be talked to, what would help me, and learning to unlearn all these kinds of things. Being in nature is really special, and it's that's the jam.
Well, for anybody out there who doesn't already know your works, what are the best places that they could connect with you individually or Grand Tapestry as, a collective?
for me individually, I would love if anyone listening would join my Patreon. Alam has a Patreon as well. Mine is patreon.com/Eli. But as far as social media, it's all good. Instagram is @TheRealEli. Twitter is @Eli. Freaking Facebook, I don't even go on there. You can follow me there if you want. I freaking hate that Facebook. Sorry, I'm going on a rant. But Patreon is the best. I mean, if you're interested and want to support, that is by far the best way to have a direct connection to artists, and you know that you are supporting me directly. You're not going through someone else and getting your money chopped up before it gets to me. And I do so many cool things on my Patreon, including original art every month and exclusive songs and podcasts and et cetera, et cetera. So that would be the way for me.
Same, patreon.com/Alam Khan. It's just, that's the way you can connect and cut out the middlemen, and you can really connect with the people that value your art and want to be a part of it. And we create whole worlds that people can interact with from all kinds of things that we offer. Otherwise, Instagram, all that stuff, or my website, alamkhan.com. I got link trees and all trees, and
Trees and
I like
shit.
real trees more than link trees. But yeah, we're on all that stuff. Instagram, FB. I don't
And
like
Grant,
Facebook.
obviously, Grand Tapestry is at Grand Tapestry.
Grand Tapestry
yeah.
is there. It's linked to all our stuff. Yeah, grandtapestry.com.
Excellent.
Find
We
us.
did just release an instrumental album version of our first album on Friday, which people wanted for a while. And so for anybody that wants to hear that, there's an instrumental version of that album. That's our newest one, but hopefully we'll put out the other half of that Tides one sometime, you know, when it looks doable. But
Sir.
yeah.
Excellent. Well, last question is for you. It's open-ended. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that you didn't get a chance to today?
No, I appreciate you letting us talk about our music and sharing it with people. And yeah, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Man. Thank you, Mike.
Well, hey, I want to appreciate and recognize both of you for being individually so prolific, putting yourself out there, Eli, and discussing some of the struggles that you've been through, and just being an open book with that. And Alam, you know, pursuing the music and being true to the sound that is in your lineage, and both of you just collaborating and making such fire music, which is, you know, I feel excited every time I put it on. So I know that others around the world will find it and appreciate it. So thank you for being artists.
Thanks, man. Appreciate
Time
it.
today.
Sound like game as we run through the grass. I'm a bandit with grains of sand as it moves through the glass. So I kick it, it shatters on the concrete when I pass. Time is pounding these lessons as we make our confessions. Time remains undefeated. There's no line to take measure. Death and birth is the pleasure. Time is light like a feather, yet waits until it's tethered. Your body till time's up then severed. There's no science to choke it. All that does is provoke it. Time is separate and loaded. Guns on your temple. This ocean is vast, wide. The universe is flexed out for ages. But music defies time's wrath. That's the grace. That's the grace. 4 times, change on the dime. What? Time takes toll, man takes time. Get it while you got it.
You've been listening to the Freio Music Podcast with Michael Morahan. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. And don't forget to share this podcast everywhere. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay tuned.
You are listening to Freio Music.